This is the Garage News Desk, the stories with Michael Porter. The Justice Department on Monday ordered federal prosecutors to drop corruption charges against New York City Mayor Eric Adams, arguing in a remarkable departure from long-standing norms that the case was interfering with the mayor's ability to aid the president's crackdown on illegal immigration. In a two-page memo obtained by the Associated Press, Acting Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove told prosecutors in New York that they were directed to dismiss the bribery charges against Adams immediately. Bove said the order was not based on the strength of evidence in the case, but rather because it had been brought too close to Adams' re-election campaign and was distracting from the mayor's efforts to assist in the Trump administration's law and order priorities. The pending prosecution has unduly restricted Mayor Adams' ability to devote full attention and resources to the illegal immigration and violent crime, Bove wrote. The memo also ordered prosecutors in New York not to take additional investigative steps against the Democrat until after November's mayoral election, though it left open the possibility that charges could be refiled after that following a review. The intervention and reasoning that a powerful defendant could be too occupied with official duties to face accountability for alleged crimes marked an extraordinary deviation from long-standing Justice Department norms. Public officials at the highest level of government are routinely investigated by the Justice Department, including President Donald Trump during his first term, without prosecutors advancing a claim that they should be let off the hook to attend to government service. An attorney for Adams, Alex Spiro, said the Justice Department's order had vindicated the mayor's claim of innocence. Now, thankfully, the mayor in New York can put this unfortunate and misguided prosecution behind them, said Spiro, who has also represented Elon Musk. A spokesperson for the acting U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, Danielle Sassoon, declined to comment. The case against Adams was brought under the previous U.S. Attorney for the district, Damian Williams, who stepped down before Trump became president. The memo follows months of speculation that Trump would take steps to end the case against Adams, who was charged in September with accepting bribes of free or discounted travel and illegal campaign contributions from foreign nationals seeking to buy his influence. Adams, a Democrat elected on a centrist platform, has moved noticeably right following his indictment, rankling some within his own party. Rather than restricting cooperation with immigration and customs enforcement, as Adams once promised, he has expressed a willingness to roll back the city's so-called sanctuary policies and pledged not to publicly criticize a president whose policies he once described as abusive. In recent weeks, he implied that Trump's agenda would be better for New York than former President Joe Biden's. Several of the mayor's opponents in the Democratic mayoral primary claimed Monday that Adams had agreed to do Trump's bidding because he hoped for leniency. Instead of standing up for New Yorkers, Adams is standing up for precisely one person, said Brad Lander, the city's comptroller and a mayoral challenger. Zoran Mamdani, a state assembly member who is also running for mayor, called for an investigation into whether Adams cut any kind of deal with the Trump administration that involves breaking city law. Trump, who was convicted last year of falsifying business records to cover up a hush money payment, has previously expressed solidarity with Adams. He hinted at the possibility of a pardon in December, telling reporters that the mayor had been treated pretty unfairly. He had also claimed, without offering evidence, that Adams was being persecuted for criticizing former President Joe Biden's policies on immigration. "I know what it's like to be persecuted by the DOJ for speaking out against open borders," Trump said in October at a Manhattan event attended by Adams. "We were persecuted, Eric. I was persecuted, and so are you, Eric." The prosecutors in New York had noted that the investigation into Adams began before he began feuding with Biden over migrant funding. Still, Bove, in his memo, echoed some of Trump's and Adams' claims about politicization. It cannot be ignored that Mayor Adams criticized the prior administration's immigration policies before the charges were filed. The criminal case against Adams involves allegations that he accepted illegal campaign contributions and lavish travel perks worth more than $100,000, including expensive flight upgrades, luxury hotel stays, and even a trip to a bathhouse, while serving in his previous job as Brooklyn Borough President. The indictment said a Turkish official who helped facilitate the trips then leaned on Adams for favors, at one point asking him to lobby the fire department to allow a newly constructed 36-story diplomatic building to open in time for a planned visit by Turkey's president. Prosecutors also said they had evidence of Adams personally directing campaign staffers to solicit foreign donations, then disguising those contributions in order to qualify for a city program that provides a generous, publicly funded match for small-dollar donations. Foreign nationals are banned from contributing to U.S. election campaigns under federal law. As recently as January 6th, prosecutors had indicated their investigation remained active, writing in court papers that they continued to uncover additional criminal conduct by Adams. The task of carrying out the order to dismiss the case will fall to Sassoon, who assumed job the day after Trump took office. Her role was intended to be temporary. Trump in November nominated Jay Clayton, the former chairman of the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission, to the post, an appointment that must be confirmed by the Senate. Federal agents had also been investigating other senior Adams aides. Prior to the mayor's indictment, federal authorities seized phones from a police commissioner, schools chancellor, multiple deputy mayors, and the mayor's director of Asian affairs. Each of those officials denied wrongdoing but have since resigned. In December, Adams' chief advisor and closest confidant, Ingrid Lewis Martin, was indicted by a state prosecutor, the Manhattan District Attorney, on charges that she and her son accepted $100,000 in bribes related to real estate construction projects. 2 Venezuelan planes flew to the United States on Monday and returned home with deported Venezuelans, signaling a possible improvement in relations between longtime diplomatic adversaries and a victory for President Donald Trump in his efforts to get more countries to take their people back. The U.S. and Venezuelan governments separately confirmed the flights by Venezuelan airline Conviasa without saying how many were aboard or disclosing their routes. Flights of illegal aliens to Venezuela resume, the White House said in a post on the X platform, saying they were overseen by Richard Grenell, a top Trump advisor who recently traveled to Venezuela. The Venezuelan government confirmed the flights in a statement that took issue with an ill-intentioned and false narrative around the presence of members of the Tren de Aragua gang in the United States. It said most Venezuelan immigrants are decent, hardworking people, and that U.S. officials sought to stigmatize the South American country. Deportation flights from the U.S. to Venezuela were halted for years, but restarted for a short time under the Biden administration in October 2023 when a jet transported about 130 migrants home. Venezuelans began showing up at the U.S. border with Mexico in large numbers in 2021 and are currently one of the largest nationalities entering illegally. Monday's flights came days after the first flights of immigrants to a U.S. military base in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and after U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio struck agreements with El Salvador and Guatemala for those countries to take people who were not their citizens. A federal judge in New Mexico on Sunday preemptively blocked the transfer of 3 Venezuelan men to Guantanamo Bay. In their request for a temporary halt, lawyers for the men said their clients fit the profile of those the administration has prioritized for detention in Guantanamo, i.e. Venezuelan men detained in the El Paso area with false charges of connections with the Tren de Aragua gang. Trump wrote after Grenell's visit that the Maduro government had agreed to receive all Venezuela illegal aliens who were encamped in the U.S., including gang members of Tren de Aragua, and pay for their transportation. 6 Americans held in Venezuela were released at the time. In its statement Monday, The Venezuelan government didn't comment on any future flights. The acting head of the federal agency responsible for responding to disasters said Monday that he's suspending payments sent to New York City to house migrants and that staff who made them will be held accountable, after Elon Musk blasted the transactions on his social media platform. Musk, who is head of the Department of Government Efficiency, has consolidated control over much of the federal government and is working to cut costs and shrink the workforce, posted on X that his team just discovered that FEMA sent $59 million last week to luxury hotels in New York City to house illegal migrants. He said the money is intended for disaster relief and would be clawed back. Cameron Hamilton, acting administrator of the Federal Emergency Management Agency, reposted Musk's comments and said the payments were suspended as of Sunday. Musk gave no evidence to support his claim, and information from the city of New York indicated that money it's received to care for migrants was appropriated by Congress and allocated to the city last year by FEMA. The city hasn't been notified of any pause in funding, spokeswoman Liz Garcia said. A statement noted that the city has received federal government reimbursements through the past week and said the matter would be discussed directly with federal officials. Neither Hamilton nor Musk specified what kind of payments were involved. But the comments on X, reposted thousands of times, likely referred to payments made by the Shelter and Services Program, which gives money to reimburse cities, towns, or organizations for immigration-related expenses. FEMA did not respond to questions about the payments. But spokesman Tricia McLaughlin for the Department of Homeland Security, to which FEMA belongs, pointed to recent statements by Secretary Kristi Noem. As Secretary Noem said yesterday, "We must get rid of FEMA the way it exists today," McLaughlin told the Associated Press on Monday. This is yet another egregious example. Individuals who circumvented leadership and unilaterally made this payment will be fired and held accountable. What is the Shelter and Services Program? When migrants arrive at the border, they're often released into the U.S. because the federal government doesn't have enough space to hold them all. Feeding and housing them often falls on local and state governments, as well as nonprofits. In 2019, with the number of people coming directly to the southern border climbing dramatically, Congress authorized the federal government to reimburse some of those costs. Those were the first such payments and the beginning of the Shelter and Services Program. The money comes directly from Congress and is specifically for Customs and Border Protection, also part of the Department of Homeland Security. FEMA administers the payments. The money is separate from the Disaster Relief Fund, which is FEMA's main funding stream to help people and governments affected by disasters. The Shelter and Services Program has become a flashpoint for criticism by Republicans who incorrectly claim it's taking money from people hit by hurricanes or floods. Critics also have questioned whether taxpayer money should go to cities and states where right to shelter laws mean everyone must be given a place to stay. At least 2 other localities that received money through the Shelter and Services Program said they had not heard from the federal government about whether they would take back the money. What did Elon Musk say about the program? Musk called the $59 million his team has identified gross insubordination to the president's executive order and said the funds would be recouped. It was not clear where the $59 million figure came from, and officials did not provide details to AP. The New York City mayor's office said it received $81 million in payments from the federal government for immigration-related costs last week in 2 separate pieces, one of which was about $59 million, with $19 million for direct hotel costs. New York City's right to shelter laws require the city to provide shelter to anyone who's homeless. It has historically housed homeless people in hotels. City resources have been strained with an influx of roughly 230,000 migrants since the spring of 2022. In addition to housing migrants temporarily in hotels, it also uses tent complexes. The city says it currently shelters 46,000 migrants, most of whom are part of families. In another post Monday, Musk said that under the Biden administration, FEMA took money away from disaster relief and spent it on five-star hotels for illegals. Garcia said the city has never paid luxury rates. The vast majority are outside Manhattan, and the government has paid on average $152 a night for rooms, according to a 2024 city comptroller report. In comparison, five-star hotels in Manhattan for the coming weekend run from $400 a night to well over $1,000. The payments of $81 million, Garcia said, covered reimbursements for November 2023 to October 2024, including hotel, security, food, and other costs. She said the city applied in April. The money was appropriated last year by Congress, and FEMA allocated it last year. The city has millions more in outstanding reimbursements, she said. Is the Trump administration getting rid of FEMA? The confusion over the payments comes amid intense interest in FEMA's future. In a North Carolina trip last month, President Trump said he was considering getting rid of FEMA. He's also creating a task force to carry out a full-scale review on the organization. Republicans last fall lambasted FEMA, saying it wasn't doing enough to help survivors hit by double hurricanes Helene and Milton. The agency was also beset by false claims about the storms and withheld aid, often fueled by Trump and others just ahead of the presidential election. Criticism of FEMA intensified after the agency announced that a staffer was fired after she directed workers not to go to homes with yard signs supporting Trump. Hamilton, a former Navy SEAL and unsuccessful Republican congressional candidate from Virginia, previously worked on emergency management issues for the Departments of Homeland Security and State, but has limited experience handling natural disasters. He's been critical of FEMA on social media and outspoken about increasing security along the southern border, where the agency's resources could be redirected. Project 2025, a conservative blueprint for Trump's second term prepared by the president's allies, called for dismantling Homeland Security and relocating FEMA to the Department of Interior or the Department of Transportation. It also suggested changing the formula that the agency uses to determine when federal disaster assistance is warranted, shifting the costs of preventing and responding to disasters to states. A coalition of labor unions filed a lawsuit Monday asking a federal court to stop Elon Musk's team from accessing private data at the Education Department, the Treasury Department, and the Office of Personnel Management. The suit, led by the American Federation of Teachers, alleges the Trump administration violated federal privacy laws when it gave Musk's Department of Government Efficiency access to systems with personal information on tens of millions of Americans without their consent. It was filed in federal court in Maryland. It's the latest in a flurry of legal challenges to Musk's growing influence over federal agencies he has promised to slash or dismantle. A federal judge in New York blocked Musk's team from a Treasury Department system on Saturday after 19 Democratic attorneys general sued over privacy concerns. The AFD suit warns of safety risks to personal data that has been shared with Musk's team, including an Education Department system housing information on more than 40 million Americans with federal student loans. The database includes Social Security numbers, driver's license numbers, home addresses, and more. The department is effectively one of America's biggest banks. If there was a breach of this magnitude in the private sector, it would rightly be a national scandal, said Randy Weingarten, president of the AFD. The lawsuit accuses the Trump administration of handing over sensitive data for reasons beyond its intended use, allegedly violating the Privacy Act. Instead of carrying out the functions of the federal student loan program, the lawsuit says DOJ has been accessing loan data for purposes of destroying the Education Department. President Donald Trump has vowed to close the Education Department and turn over its authority to states and schools. Musk on his social media site X said Friday that the department doesn't exist, responding to Democrats in Congress who attempted to visit the agency's headquarters but were turned away by security. The suit asks a federal court to stop Musk's team from accessing that data along with Treasury systems and an OPM database with sensitive information on all 2.3 million federal employees. It also seeks the destruction of any records that were already disclosed. Steamrolling into sensitive government record systems has led to a massive data breach that threatens to upend how these critical systems are maintained and compromises the safety and security of personal identifying information for Americans all across the country, according to the suit. One of the nation's largest teachers' unions, the AFT, says it represents 1.8 million workers in education, healthcare, and government. Also joining the suit are 6 people with sensitive information stored in federal systems, including military veterans who received federal student loans and other federal benefit payments. The suit also is backed by the National Active and Retired Federal Employees Association and the International Association of Machinists and Aerospace Workers. On Friday, a separate lawsuit on behalf of the University of California Student Association asked a federal judge in Washington to halt Musk's access to education department systems. The plaintiffs in that case filed for an emergency restraining order on Monday, seeking to block DOJ from sensitive data. New York City police apologized for mistakenly accusing a teenager of a fatal shooting at a Brooklyn parade, then failing to retract the false allegation for nearly 5 months, despite knowing it was incorrect. In a statement sent to news outlet Sunday, the NYPD said an image it circulated on social media of Camden Lee, a 15-year-old Brooklyn resident, mistakenly stated that he was wanted for the fatal shooting at the West Indian American Day Parade in September. The NYPD should have immediately corrected this misstatement, added the department's chief spokesperson, Delaney Kempner. We apologize for the error and will continue to seek justice for the victims of this shooting. The apology followed reporting by the Associated Press on the NYPD's months-long refusal to retract the allegation, which spurred death threats against the teenager and questions about the department's policies for correcting misinformation. Even after police quietly deleted their online accusations and privately conceded that Lee was not a suspect in the killing, the department had previously refused to walk back the allegation, ignoring desperate pleas from Lee's family. In its updated statement, the police department said Lee was a person of interest in the shooting, which remains unsolved, since he was on the scene before, during, and after the incident. They did not elaborate on why Lee was identified among thousands of others at or near the crowded scene, or why the mistake was not fixed earlier. Even in their apology, they're painting him with a brush of culpability to cover their mistake, said Wiley Stecklow, an attorney for Lee's family. They're downplaying what they did and not owning up to the fact that they put him in harm's way. Stecklow said the family still had not heard from police directly. Lee, a high school sophomore, said he had attended the Labor Day celebration after leaving football practice with a teammate. Minutes after they arrived, gunfire erupted along the route, killing 25-year-old Denzel Chon and wounding 4 others, including Lee's teammate. Nearly 3 weeks after the shooting, police shared a photograph of Lee on X and Instagram accusing him of homicide. They widely circulated the image to news outlets, which continued repeating the false allegation long after police had privately acknowledged it was untrue. According to an attorney for the family, Lee met with homicide detectives days after the initial social media posts and was told he was not a suspect in the killing, but was being sought for questioning about what he had witnessed. In the 5 months since the initial allegation, Lee has received numerous death threats that have pushed his family into hiding, forcing him to leave the city and miss school for weeks at a time. "It takes me to a dark place," Lee told the AP. "I don't feel like myself anymore. I don't have the opportunity to explain my side of the story. Everyone is so fixed on this one image of me, murderer." This is the Garage News Desk, the stories. Thanks for watching. Take care of yourself. I am Michael Porter.